Coming to you live from the heart of the free state of New Hampshire, this is The Independents with Carla Gericke. And now, here's your host, Carla Gericke.
Hey guys, and welcome back to The Independents. It is Wednesday, and I'm delighted to be here in the studio with you guys today to kind of make all the Granite Staters' heads explode a little bit. Today's show is going to be about Make America States Again, MASA. If we can have MEGA and we can have MAHA, then we can certainly have MASA as well. Make America States Again is actually a term that I believe I coined back in 2016. I can prove it too. I was putting in some data this morning with the Grok AI LLM and sort of was like, oh, did I come up with this? And at a minimum, it seems fairly strong that I did. So welcome to the MASA movement or the MASA movement. We can decide how we want to say it. But here's what I want to ask you right off the bat. Estonia has a population of 1.4 million people, and no one claims that they're not allowed to be a country. So why do people say that about New Hampshire? The Democrats are freaking out because I put out a candidate survey from NHExit Now, the organization that I lead with regard to independence here in New Hampshire. You can go to NHExitnow.org for more information about what the organization is about. But because we're heading into election season and because I am who I am, and because this is really my number one issue, I sent out a candidate survey. This is the second time this has happened. 2 years ago when we sent it out, if I recall correctly, we had 3 responses in total. So far, I have gotten 3 responses online. Thank you all very much. And then I stopped in this morning at my mailbox and picked up 8 written responses, including one from a Democrat, which I will read in a moment or two. But here is really what sort of primed this for today's discussion. I believe NH Journal and reporter Damian Fisher is coming out with an article today about the candidate letter I sent out. So I did respond to him early this morning with sort of my position. My favorite line out of that one was, I'm early, but I'm not wrong, and I'm willing to stand by that. So today we're going to talk just a little bit about, like, is this the craziest idea you guys have ever heard? Or does a national divorce, given the polarization, given COVID mania, given the national debt, which I will dive into in a second, does this union, where it seems like half the people don't even like each other anymore, does this union, this marriage, does this lifestyle we have make sense anymore? And my position is, not really. That was also the position I took on Dr. Phil about 2 years ago, last week, I believe. There's a great 17-minute clip. It was an hour-long show, but they cut it down with about $1.7 million. 1.7 million views so far. So go look for that. Of course, it uses words like secession, civil war. But here are the words I want to use. Peaceful, democratic, futuristic, solving problems before they become greater problems, or perhaps even, why don't we look at this like a game? Why don't we look at this like, hey, we get to build our own country, and what does a country startup scorecard look like? So I'm going to get into that. So first of all, let's take a look at this letter. But before we do, I do want to mention a few choice things because I think we have kicked the can down the road as much or as far or possibly as far as we can. What do I mean by that? You and I both know that we're getting poorer. Maybe the rich and Elon and Peter and those dudes are getting richer, but even Elon went from a trillionaire back to a billionaire, so not even they are really getting rich. But the reason this is happening is because we have diluted, but through printing too many dollars to pay our national debt, everything is becoming more expensive. Now, we understand that conversation in the context of countries like Brazil or Zimbabwe with hyperinflation, and everyone's like, oh, that could never happen in America. And maybe it is something that, is the can down the road a little bit, but it's not as unlikely as we think. And to put the numbers in context, just for you back home, I am going to explain $1 million, $1 billion, and $1 trillion according to time. So 1 million seconds is 11 and a half days. 1 million seconds, 11 and a half days. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. And 1 trillion seconds is about 32,000 years. So when you hear the clowns in DC willy-nilly jumping from 1 billion to 1 trillion, it's a big deal. These are not just zeros. This is an unsustainable path that we are on. This national debt cannot hold. And when people decide that they're going to stop buying our dollars, or when we're too poor and we've used all our armaments to fight other people's wars, the chickens, as they say, may come home to roost. So why does that million, billion, trillion actually matter? Well, because it took about 200 years for America. Remember, we all just went through our 250th anniversary here. And please also remember that America was born from secession. So anyone who's like, oh, we can't do that, I'm like, we did it already, so I'm pretty sure we could do it again. But it took about 200 years for Washington to accumulate the first $1 trillion in national debt. It takes less than 100 days now to rack up another trillion. Now, in order to put it in real context for you guys, I've been working on this issue since I moved to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, but actively since 2016, and we've been introducing legislation since about 2020. So back then, we just put in a blanket CACR, that is a constitutional amendment that everyone in the Granite State would have to vote on. So our legislators, by the way, you don't get to gatekeep the whole issue. All you should be doing up at the State House on this issue is saying, yes, we should put the question to the voters of New Hampshire. But it's taking about 70 days to rack up the next trillion. So back then, I listened to the feedback from the original constitutional amendment, and then when we reintroduced the bill 2 years later, we added a caveat, we added a triggering event. We said, when the national debt reaches $40 trillion, then that will create the opportunity to put the question on the ballot so that you and I can decide, do we want to go down with the Titanic over in DC, or do we want to do something new, cool, and different right here at home? That $40 trillion, we're going to hit it in the next month. So in 2 years, we took something where I thought I had a 10-year lead, and it has been condensed because of our debt and because of the compounding of interest and because the interest rates are high. The debt level is unsustainable. So if that is true, which I think the math and the zeros and the time even holds, then what are we going to do about it? Are you going to be the idiot who sits around and goes, I think we can kick the can some more? Or like me, are you going to be solution-driven, and are you going to start to have the hard conversations that we have to have so that we don't all get stuck with our foot in our mouth? All right, so this is the candidate survey. So it's a 2-page letter that I sent out, and it came from NHExit Now, also sort of funded through the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence. And the letter said, Dear candidate, as one of our potential future legislators, you have the power to support your constituents who support a free and independent nation of New Hampshire. Those of us who support national divorce and peaceful separation of New Hampshire from the federal government are tired of Washington taking from our people without giving back. New Hampshire is in an abusive relationship with D.C., and the time to leave is now. As the president of NHExit Now, a peaceful movement known as NHExit, I am sending along a pledge for you to stand with those of us who support a free and independent nation. For far too long, the people of New Hampshire have been represented by officials who speak of the New Hampshire advantage, but prioritize the interests of Washington and special interest groups, opioid lobbyists, etc., above the interests of Granite Staters. Our state motto, live free or die, has been diminished by leaders who put our sovereignty and self-determination aside in favor of outside agendas. The New Hampshire First Pledge seeks to change that. We hope our politicians will commit to a pledge with the people of New Hampshire, promising to vote and act solely in the interests of our citizens. This pledge creates an unwavering accountability, ensuring that every decision aligns with our values and with the New Hampshire Constitution. Join us in reshaping New Hampshire's leadership by signing the pledge. Together, we can ensure the voices of Granite Staters are heard and that our values are upheld. Let's put New Hampshire first. All right, so I sent that out a couple of weeks ago, and then on the other side, there is just a short pledge where the candidates can put their name, their office, their district, phone number, and party. Some of them are like, no party, others Republican. As I mentioned, I did get feedback from a Democrat. That was from Tim Horrigan, who actually rightfully said, I am surprised that you're doing this during Trump's reign. And I'm like, yeah, dude, here's the reality. New Hampshire independence is a bipartisan issue. If you're a Granite Stater who loves it here, who loves your quality of life, who loves the environment, who loves nature, and knows we have a really special thing going on here, then this independence movement, or at least the discussion about it, is for you. Because why? We cannot reform anything in D.C. I mean, even with this Fauci revelations that are coming out, they waited until the time had expired so that nothing can really happen to him. He, of course, has a 10-year order pen pardon. So, all of this that we're hearing sounds good. And then you go look and you're like, wow, they gave us this over here. Thank you, Rand Paul. And then over here, they just appointed a whole bunch of other people. And, of course, just authorized also an mRNA flu shot don't get it. All right, so the questions on the other side of this NHExit Now candidate survey asks the following things. And I will say this, it was interesting. I have 5 questions here. And again, responses have differed. I hope those of you who have not completed yours will do so. I'd be happy to listen to Democrats, to hear what your positions are, what your fears are, what your concerns are. And guys, the conversation can't just be, hey, Carla, that's too radical. It's got to be better than that. Because look, I have traveled all over the world. I have lived in places that have hyperinflation. I have studied history. And I think I have compelling reasons, and I can build a compelling case that indeed this will be the best outcome for people of New Hampshire. So here are the 5 questions. People ticked some of them changed some of the answers. Again, part of my goal is to start to have the conversation so that when the time comes, we're not, again, stuck with our foot in our mouth. So 1 was, I pledge to place the interests of New Hampshire and its citizens before any other nation, state, political entity, organization, or individual. 2, I further pledge to uphold the rights of Granite Staters under Article 10 of the New Hampshire Constitution, the right of revolution, to reform, alter, or abolish government when it is necessary for the public good. Now, New Hampshire is uniquely one of the few states that has an enshrined right of revolution. So everything with regard to this conversation, again, is constitutional. 3, if it is within the powers of my office, this is now the candidate, I will vote for legislation and resolutions that call for a vote on New Hampshire reasserting its sovereignty and independence, and I will continue to do so every term I am elected until such a referendum is held. Now, the word referendum here is not similar to, say, a referendum in California or Oregon or one of those places. The term here means putting a constitutional amendment on the ballot that we would vote on. Now, in the 18 years that I've lived in New Hampshire, we have passed 2 constitutional amendments, one expanding taxpayer standing and one expanding our right to privacy. So these are not stretch goals. When I put my shoulder to the wheel, I think this will happen, but conversations need to be happening before then. The 4th part of the pledge, if the national debt of the United States reaches 50 trillion, so I had to make it from no number to 40 trillion to, oops, we're about to hit the 40 trillion to 50 trillion, which technically would have, before we debased our money, bought us 10 years, but now we are on average adding $1 trillion in debt every 70 to 100 days. So if I said it's 50 trillion, that gives us 10 times, that gives us not a lot of time to get this going. So do you want to wait until the ship sinks, or do you want to have a plan? So if the national debt of the United States reaches 50 trillion, I, as the candidate, will support legislation and resolutions that call for a vote on New Hampshire reasserting its sovereignty and declaring independence. In such a scenario, I will advocate for the people of New Hampshire to have the opportunity to decide their future in light of the unsustainable financial burden placed on the nation. Now, if you think, what does any of this matter in terms of the national debt? Because you think, free stuff's great, but you don't understand if your eggs went from $1 a dozen to $6 a dozen, it's not free. It's just being built into different parts. The debt is unsustainable. New Hampshire is a net payer to the federal government, meaning we pay more in taxes than we actually get back from them, and the money we get back from them comes with bells and whistles that we don't actually want to comply with. All right, last but not least on the list of things that you as a candidate can pledge was, if a majority of the people in New Hampshire vote in support of reasserting our sovereignty and state's independence, I pledge to work towards a peaceful, fair, and expedient separation from the federal government, always placing the interests of Granite Staters first. All right, so that is what all of that said. Now, before you go, oh, this is just too much, let me remind you, I actually commissioned a survey back in 2022. And at the time, so remember, I'll cast your mind back, 2022 was, Biden was in power, but it was post-COVID mania. And at the time, 63% of respondents believe that trust in New Hampshire over DC is the way to go. And that nullification, meaning getting rid of federal laws, which I'm all for, hey guys up at the State House, nullify, 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 until we're at a point where, oops, we're actually going to have to declare independence. At the time, back in 2022, 29% of the respondents overall supported 29%, 30%. A third of people already support independence. And at that time, 52% of Republicans did, which of course is where it becomes partisan, because half of you are like, oh, when my team's in power, then it's all good. And then when your team's not in power, it's all bad. But it's all bad all the time out of DC because it's too big, it's too far away from us, and it does not have our interests at heart. Okay, so why and can we do this, and would it be awesome? So the first thing I'm excited about is, New Hampshire has a nuclear plant. We are the only state in New England that does not have a moratorium on nuclear power. We currently have a governor, Kelly Ayotte, who is pro-nuclear. We are exploring SMRs, so small modular reactors, which are small nuclear reactors that can basically run a community of 30,000 households, so that's super exciting. So energy independence, I think, is going to be part of the conversation, and it is very exciting to see us moving in the right directions with nuclear in particular. What are some of the other things that we should be thinking about? Well, of course, from the perspective of a population size, I mentioned Estonia at the start, but we could also look at places like Singapore or like Hong Kong or Iceland. We would be 4 times the size of Iceland. We could have a very loose federation relationship with the surrounding states, so that sort of like that EU zone, I can never remember the name correctly, but Shenzhen, or I think that might be the Chinese one. But anyway, there's a zone within the EU where you can travel between countries. We could certainly do something like that. In many ways, I think we could just treat it as dual citizenship and treat Granite Staters as, citizens of New Hampshire and citizens of America if they choose to do that. And then treat everyone like an expat. No one is taking your Social Security checks if you live in Mexico, so that's not a plausible threat either. What are some of the other cool things that could happen? So, we already have a culture here of high education levels, of civic engagement. There's a strong work ethic. We are like live free or die, right? That isn't just a slogan. It is actually an ethos here in our state. So it's a lived operating system. So we can really lean into that. And if this sounds exciting to you and you don't live here yet, check out the Free State Project, fsp.org. That is where I cut my teeth. That has led me on this path. And, and so the idea is to bring more liberty lovers to the live free or die state so that, hey, maybe we build a new country. All right, so we already have the low taxes, the no sales tax, no personal income tax, no interest and dividends tax. So we have that culture of the New Hampshire advantage, which puts us in a very similar sort of vibe as Switzerland. As I mentioned, we have the energy independence. We already have a productive economy based both on manufacturing. We're doing a little too much with the war machine, in my opinion, so maybe we can get some of the BAEs and those guys out of here. But we are also a tourism state, which is great from a libertarian perspective because, one, that supports property rights, but two, it is also service-oriented, meaning that you have to be nice to your customers so that they will come back, right? So we have that sort of brand here in New Hampshire already. And then we have the geography, which is so neat, right? We have mountains. We have an international border up to Canada. We have our own coastline. It's not the longest. Maybe we'll have to annex Maine one day. We could definitely have that conversation. I would like a little more coastline, but we do have a deep sea port in Portsmouth, so we really could be an independent country that is just tapped into the markets around them. I see I'm running out of time, so I will maybe leave us with this sort of idea. Innovation, dreaming, imagining a better future, not being afraid of the present, right? Maybe going, hey, we have a lot of problems, and honestly, the 10 things they keep telling us are going to solve them, 0 of them are happening. There is a very low track record of anything getting reformed in D.C. It is a fool's game if you still want to be caught up in that. Focus your attention on Concord. Focus your attention on your own backyard first. And I say that starts with putting New Hampshire first. And I hope that many more candidates will respond to this, pro or negative. I will be up there at the State House. I will be having these conversations. I can't wait to have them with you. I think the future for us looks bright. And again, as I said to New Hampshire Journal this morning, we can figure out a country startup scorecard. I'm early, but I'm not wrong. Thank you guys for joining me. I wish you peace, love, and understanding, and peaceful secession, because if at first you don't secede, try, and try again. Peace out.